Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. We hope you've been along for the ride this morning and early afternoon on our Portuguese property masterclass, all about buying property in Portugal, as the name suggests. Let's move on to currency transfer, something that people don't consider until later in the process, but I think somebody here may tell us it's better to start it earlier in the process. Let me introduce you all to Tom Arnold of A Place in the Sun Currency. How are you today, Tom?
Very good, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here.
And tell us a little bit about A Place in the Sun Currency. Naturally, I know a fair bit about it because it's a shared business. So just talk us through the origination of the idea. Why did A Place in the Sun Currency decide to set up, and when was that, in fact?
So we decided a couple of years ago that there was an obvious hole in the market. There's a lot of currency companies out there, but they tend to work with corporate entities, moving money internationally, and sometimes that doesn't give the kind of hands-on personal service that a focused service such as A Place in the Sun Currency can give to someone who's looking to buy property overseas. It's a very different type of environment, a big corporate environment. So we wanted to set something up that was designed specifically to help people buying property overseas and focused on their particular wants and needs. And hence, obviously, A Place in the Sun as a brand, natural follow-on that the currency side of things would work perfectly there. So hence A Place in the Sun Currency was born a couple of years ago. Fully regulated entity, so you have all the same protections and security positives that you get from those big corporate companies, but with a much more hands-on approach and service-led approach for those people looking to buy property overseas. So it's a couple of years old now, already finding some really brilliant traction in this industry and helping many people with these overseas property moves and helping them ultimately to save significant amounts of money as well, obviously, as getting a really good service along the way.
Okay, well, we'll drill down to that in more detail a bit later on. But when you say helping people, so just in layman's terms, what do you do for people? So I'm maybe, let's say I make an inquiry on a property on aplaceinthesun.com that's caught my eye, or contact one of the estate agents through this event. And then I start thinking about currency, I contact you guys. What do you ask me? What services do you supply and what do you do for me?
So there's two or three quite distinct aspects of the service that we offer. The first one is focused on the exchange rate and the money saving side of things. So if you're looking to buy a property overseas, you're going to need to exchange your currency from sterling into euros, in this case in Portugal. And traditionally, you just have done that through the high street bank. The problem with a high street bank when it comes to the currency side of things is that they can't logistically offer all of their individual clients in branch or online the access to the live currency market. So subsequently, they have to set the rate quite far away from that market, and therefore you get a very poor exchange rate. When you deal with a specialist broker like A Place in the Sun Currency, we can give you access to the live market. So at the point of trade, you're actually getting a live rate, therefore it's much closer to the market. And you should expect to realize a saving of probably 3 or 4% over what you'd get through your high street bank. So, realistically, on a property worth a couple of €100,000, you're going to save circa £5,000 just on the exchange rate side. So that's kind of the first part of why you would want to use a broker. The second part is the service element of it. So you need to, there are a couple of sides to this, but the main one is it's quite complicated moving money internationally. There are different bank details that you would expect to encounter. There's different processes involved. There are different requirements. I'm sure we'll cover this in a minute, but there are, you need to get money to certain places in certain time frames and all of that side of things. So dealing with a specialist who can help you, guide you through that process, because Most people, it will be the first time they ever move money internationally when it comes to this, and it's big amounts of money. So, you know, if you need to move 200,000 euros, you really need to make sure you're going to do it right. You're going to get the bank details correct, and you're going to do it in the right time and in the right way. So that part of the service is obviously very focused with a broker such as Place and Sun Currency. The service is very, you know, consumer-led, so it's a hand-holding type of service. We're going to take every single client through a really careful set of steps to make sure that they're 100% confident in what they're doing and how it's done for them. And then the other side of it is actually more focused on the currency element of it. Picking and choosing when you do your currency exchange can save you as much money as actually just getting the best rate on the day. So the extensive knowledge and skill that all of the brokers at a Place and Sun Currency have is going to help you with market information, what's happening on the market, when the rates are doing this, when they're doing that, and ultimately helping you to pick and choose the right way of doing it. So there's 2 or 3 key elements there, but essentially it's about saving people money and giving them a much more dedicated and hand-holding type of service through what is a very complex process.
Okay, thanks, Tom. For any of you watching out there, if you have questions for Tom, just click the Q&A button. They come through to me, and I will put those questions to Tom. Let's talk about a typical transaction then. So I phone you up and I say, I've had an offer accepted on a property in Portugal. Just talk me through the flow of an initial deposit payment and then a subsequent balance payment. What's involved? I guess I need to be registered with you. You need to know where the money's coming from, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So the first step to being able to use our service is you need to register with us for a trading facility. It's very, very quick and easy to do that on our website. And obviously that allows us to set you up on our system. We need to do quite a lot of KYC, which is know your client kind of information gathering. So it's about getting all your contact details and then getting you inputted into our system. And then from there, you're in a position to be able to trade with us, because we will have done in the background a lot of sort of ID checks and things along those lines. Sometimes that does require additional supporting information, so a copy of a passport or something like that. Generally, for UK residents who've been at their address for a period of time, we can do that all automatically. Once you're registered, you're then in a position to be able to come to us for live quotes and to secure currency. That can all be done verbally on the phone. It doesn't require sort of contracts to be signed and all this kind of thing, or for money to be deposited first. That's not a requirement. So you can ring me up, Andy, and say, I need to pay a deposit of 10,000 euros over to Portugal in the next few days. I've got my contracts already, and we'll get you a live price there and then from the market. Assuming you're happy with that price, you give us an instruction to go ahead. That then allows us to secure the rate for you. We would email you over with what we call a contract note, which is a confirmation document that has the figures that we've agreed, our sterling bank details, and a section to be completed with the onward payment details over in Portugal. You then initiate a transfer of the sterling across to us. Let us know where you want the euros sent on, which is typically going to be over to the lawyer over in Portugal. And we will then do some security checking and things in the background on that beneficiary. We might need to confirm some additional information with you with regards to source of funds and the actual sort of detail of the beneficiary. So if we can't locate the lawyer, for argument's sake, we might ask you to send us a copy of a contract or similar so that we can evidence the transactional route. And then it's as simple as when your sterling arrives with us, we make the onward payment that you've instructed us to do. We send the funds direct, so you don't have to worry about that entire side of the transaction. We handle that. And then the funds, typically in terms of the time frame, you can expect funds to in the sterling side come to us within minutes, unless it's a very large amount, in which case it might be a day or two. And then the actual Portuguese side of the transaction can happen within hours. So very, very quick process, which is one of the other key advantages of using a broker over a bank as well, is that you can rest assured that that process is going to be very quick and easy, whereas banks do still tend to dawdle around transactions, and it can sometimes take up to sort of 3 or 4 days for an international payment to get through from a bank. So
Okay.
we can make sure that's quicker.
So, well, there's a question there from Simon Edwards asking, do you need a Portuguese address in order to open a bank account? But you don't actually need a bank account in Portugal to make this deposit then, because the flow of funds is from the client, the purchaser, to a place in the Sun currency in this case, and then on to the vendor's solicitor. Is that right?
Exactly right. So it's very rare for the payment for the property to ever go through the individual's bank own personal bank account. So we can make payments directly to any third party you need them to go to. So, you know, sometimes, more often than not, it is the lawyer, but sometimes it might be a developer or the agent for an initial holding deposit, for example. So we can make those payments directly. And then it's worth considering as well that on into the future, when you own the property, you have been out there some time, you know, you might have a gardener or a builder that you need to pay. We can make these payments directly to all of these people. So that's not to say you won't need your own bank account. You will ultimately for the direct debits for your bills and things along those lines. But you don't need to worry about your own bank account during the actual purchase process. We can make the payments directly without that need at all.
Okay, so I paid my deposit, which might be a chunky amount of money, but it's still a relatively small percentage of the purchase price. I now get to the more significant part of the transfer, which is the balance payment. A number of questions coming in about forward contracts. Can you just explain that for us and what's involved with the forward?
Absolutely, no problem. So when you've sorted out your deposit payment, you're then going to have a period of time until your completion payment needs to be made. That can vary in terms of the duration depending on the particular instance, but it's going to be weeks, not days. During that period, you obviously have the option to secure the currency you're going to need at any given point. You could, assuming you've got liquid sterling funds, you could at any point say, the rate looks good to me today, I'm going to buy those euros now. But once you've done that, you've essentially got dead time, because you might have 2 months before you actually need to pay the euros over. And so those euros are fine sat in our client account, but they're better off. You know, you'd rather hold on to your funds as long as you possibly can. So the option exists of something called a forward contract, as you mentioned, where you can secure currency at today's rate for a fixed point in the future and only have to pay an initial deposit amount of up around 10%. So you get to keep 90% of your funds in your own account, accruing whatever interest you can get in these very low interest rate times. But the other option might be that you might not have released those funds yet. So you might be waiting for a pension drawdown. You might be liquidizing some other assets or investments. And therefore, that would normally constrain you from being able to take advantage of a spike in the exchange rate. But with a forward contract, you don't need all those funds. So you can ring me up and say, I want to secure my rate today, but I don't need the funds for the euros for 2 months. And we can lock that rate in on that day. You then have to pay us 10% within a couple of days, but then the remaining 90% is not due until the end of the forward contract. It is worth saying that you can take the euros earlier. So if, for example, the lawyer can make the whole process a bit quicker, the searches come back a bit easier or whatever it might be, then you can take the euros earlier. There's no penalty to doing that. And it also, if the process ends up taking a little bit longer, it is possible to extend forward contracts, although there is a cost to do that. Or alternatively, you can just settle them at the appropriate time and then leave the euros on account with us until they're required for delivery to the lawyer at the end. But it's a really good mechanism for securing a rate so that you know what the property is going to cost. Ultimately, we can help you to pick and choose a good time to do that. But also, you know, you wouldn't buy a property in the UK if you didn't know what it was going to cost. for example, whereas actually when you buy a property overseas, that's inherently what you're doing, because the exchange rate is a variable. So a lot of people choose a forward contract as an option purely so that they know what the cost of the property is going to be, and there's no risk of market movement which could impact it. It could give them a positive outcome, but as often as not, obviously it's going to give them a negative outcome. So it removes that whole variable.
Okay, so now, yeah, I get that. So if the rate moved in your favor, you don't benefit from that stronger rate, but if the rate moves against you, nor are you punished,
Exactly.
and the property ends up costing you more than you thought it would. And do people have the option, say I paid a 10,000 deposit on a £100,000 property, the balance is 90, I could fix a forward for a percentage of that? I don't have to do all of it, I could do just some of it and go by the market for the remainder?
Absolutely. So tranche trading, as we call it, so securing tranches of the amount of currency that you're going to need at the end, is absolutely fine. And it's a good way of kind of hedging, if you like, the exchange rate risk, because if you need the 90,000, as you say, and you've got a 3-month period, if you book 30,000 in each of those 3 months, then you're averaging off the exchange rate across that 3-month period as well. So yeah, absolutely, that's a good mechanism. Ultimately the choice is very much yours. You can do whatever you're most comfortable with. And, you know, at a place in Sun Currency, we're not going to put any pressure on you. There's no advantage to us in you booking the forward contract initially or at certain points. We just want to help you to do what's most comfortable for you in terms of risk, ultimately, because that's what the exchange rate markets are all about. They're giving you a risk of a movement and in the cost of the property. So if we can take that risk all away, or if you're, you know, some people are by nature a bit more risk on, and if they want to take that chance on the rate, then we can help them with that too. So there's no problem, whichever route you want to take.
And Andrew Tong asks about penalties on cancelling a forward contract. I guess once you're in, aren't you? But what can do in that situation?
You are, but ultimately there is still an amount of money that's been bought to be sold back. So you mustn't ever be concerned that you are, you know, you're responsible for this massive amount of money. The two options that exist are the position is either sold back to the market unsettled, or it's settled and then the euros can be sold back at a future point. So if your sterling side of your transaction, for whatever reason, failure of a UK property sale, can't release funds from pension in time, or whatever it might be, falls down, and you can't settle the forward contract, then we can sell the position back to the market. And it's completely dependent on where the market is versus where it was when you secured. It is normal that there is a bit of a loss because obviously the reason you secured the contract was because you're expecting a certain market movement. So it is quite normal that there is a little loss, because ultimately you are selling your 100,000 euros and there's the spread of the market. But it's generally not very much, unless you're talking huge amounts of time and huge amounts of money, sorry, and obviously you have time to decide when you do it to try and minimize that loss as well. Any loss that there is taken from the deposit before the deposit's returned to you. If there's no loss, which does happen as well, then obviously the full deposit's returned to you. Although the other option, which is always the preference, is if you do have your sterling funds still, then you settle a forward contract. You're then in possession of the euros. If you've changed your mind, you don't want to buy a property overseas anymore for whatever reason, then you just pick and choose the time to sell those euros back that limits your potential loss from the market. Or alternatively, if you are still in the market to buy a property overseas, but this transaction has fallen down for whatever reason, then we can hold on to those euros for you until such time as you need them. And that can be months. So they're safe and secure in our client's account, and they're ready there. So if you do ever need to cancel a forward contract, again, we're going to help you to limit any losses that there are. There will help. There's generally time on your side to do so as well. So there's always options. So yes, there can be a cost. It is worth setting that out quite directly, but we're not trying to penalize people. It's only ever going to be the difference between the buy and the sell across the market. And we'll obviously always try and limit that as much as possible.
I hope that answers your question, Andrew. Lots of people asking then, how do you make your money? So you're not fee based then. You're just making a margin on the exchange rate. It's just a smaller margin than a bank would make. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, exactly right. So as I said, logistically, the banks can't give you access to the live market. So they might set their exchange rate 4 or 5% wide to protect themselves from the market moving during the course of a day or however long they set that rate for. Whereas for us, you ring us up for any type of transaction, be it a normal deposit kind of trade or a forward contract, and we can get you a live price from the market there and then, which allows us to offer you a much, much smaller margin. So we make very tight margins, which is what allows you such a good saving, but ours is a turnover business. So we make the money as an organization by shifting huge volumes of currency for people. Tens and tens of millions of units of currency every month pass through our accounts for our clients. So that's how we make the money for ourselves, but it's the same mechanism that allows us to offer you such a good saving.
David Timmons asks about a daily or a weekly limit on the amount of money that you transfer. Is there anything, any regulation or legal limit on the money that you can move?
No, not at all. So there's no legal limits. You will sometimes find there are logistical limits within your own banking. So you might find that if you're using online banking, for example, that you can only move £10,000 a day or something like that. It varies bank to bank and for different types of bank accounts, but there's no legal limits on the amounts that you can move around. There are a number of urban myths that exist that say that if you move more than $10,000, euros or whatever, that the banks are obliged to tell various tax authorities or to report this or that or the other. And they are exactly that, urban myths. There's no restrictions. You don't need to worry about it at all. It is simply a case of doing whatever logistically works best for you.
And this service that you offer is a specialism for British buyers. So it's predominantly sterling to euros or dollars. Can you help people working in US dollars to Canadian dollars or US dollars to euros?
Absolutely. So we call them cross-currency transactions. So it's transactions that don't involve sterling. So you can go from pretty much any currency to pretty much any other currency. There are certain restrictions on UK organisations working with residents of certain countries around the world, just from a regulatory point of view. So for example, if you are a US resident, it's quite hard for a UK financial institution to work for you. But there are ways and means we can generally make things like that work. And we can still transact dollars into euros irrespective of where the person is resident. So if, for example, quite a common thing is that you might encounter someone who works offshore and is paid in US dollars, but then, for example, wants to buy a place in Portugal. And so we can still help them with their dollar to euro transaction. Yeah, there's no disadvantage or anything like that. The key rule is to do as few currency exchanges as you can. So if you do get paid in dollars, for example, it would make no sense at all to go dollars to sterling and then sterling to euros, because you're just doubling the margins that you give away to either a broker or to the bank each time you do the exchange.
And people who own properties, then you reference regular payments, so people might have a regular pension payment coming through your services. Would that be a similar thing?
Yeah, absolutely. You get exactly the same level of service and exactly the same cost saving, no matter the volume involved. So if you do that initial deposit payment, then maybe a forward contract for your settlement amount, you're then going to probably need to put some money into your bank account each month or each quarter, or however you choose to do it. You might have to buy a car, you might have to pay a gardener, pay a builder, whatever it might be. So for any and all of those payments, you would still come to a place in the sun currency, because you're still going to get the same guidance and help as well as the cost saving as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom. That's been really useful. So you can get in touch with Tom over at our Meet Our Exhibitors pages at this website here. I have to remember it's the opposite way to point to show you a place in the sun digital.co.uk, or of course you can go straight to a place in the sun currency.com. I guess registering, that's there's no charge or obligation. It's just a straightforward thing.
Not at all. It's very, very straightforward. There's no cost or obligation, so it's well worth getting registered in advance of your need, just to get the bit of admin out the way. You're then set up and ready to go when the time comes that you find the right property.
Marvellous. Thank you, Tom. We are going to leave it there. We have another session starting in 5 minutes. This is all about managing your Portuguese property once you've gone ahead and bought one, and the responsibilities that go with that, and property management and letting your property, all this sort of stuff. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you, Tom. Goodbye, everyone. See you shortly.